Who's this? Oh, you're an entrepreneur? Oh, you're a real estate investor. Oh, you're trying to learn from those who did it. Well, come into the lab then. Put your white coat on, gloves on, notepad, and let's build, y'all.
Real estate experiment. What is happening, y'all? Today we have one overdue guest. We have Jason Van Orden in the building, and it's ordinary. We look to have practitioners in the lab, and I think there's no better time to have Jason here with us, who is really helps a lot, and he's helped a lot over the years, not only in podcasting, but as far as helping people create a thought leadership platform online digitally. I think right now is obviously a perfect timing for you to come in and join on our podcast. So Jason, welcome, my friend.
Yeah, thanks, Ruben. It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Look, I always like I always believe that, we have a lot of, real estate investors come in the lab, as we talk about, and we have a lot of entrepreneurs as well who are not necessarily in real estate who come in the lab. And I always like to find out a little bit who's behind the person, because I do believe you are a reflection of your business. And obviously you've done such a good job helping others, and as well, of course, of doing very well for yourself as far as business goes. So tell us, who was Jason before Jason, the Jason that I'm looking at today? Who was Jason before that, so you can kind of cover some gaps?
Yeah, sure. So a couple, I won't make this too long, but a couple significant things. If we go back to the year 2000, I graduated from college as an engineer, software engineer. I was also a musician at the time, and I thought I landed, a dream job working for a company that made equipment for guitarists and other musicians. I thought that was pretty cool. At the same time, I had a band that I was very, very serious about. Now, the reason I mentioned these two things is pretty quickly I got disenchanted with that corporate job.
Yeah.
Started learning I'm not cut out to work for somebody else, and started reading a lot of books to figure out, well, what are the other options? Do I go into academia? Do I get an MBA? Do I, what am I going to do here? Do I get even more serious about my band? The reason I mentioned my band is that's where I first started marketing and learning marketing, because I've learned that if you want people to come to your shows and buy your CDs, you got to know how to market to get them interested. And I figured I was actually pretty decent at this marketing thing. In my reading, I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, a number of other, wealth building books, and, lots of talk about real estate. So I did end up quitting my job in 2003 after 3 years as a corporate person, and ventured out doing real estate investing, and had a bit of success doing that. I did enjoy parts of it, though. Pretty quickly, I started getting pulled more towards doing some consulting for real estate investors who needed help marketing. And I kind of had this aha moment when I was talking to a lot of real estate investors in a kind of a club association meetup that we had locally where I lived at the time. And what kind of dawned on me as I was listening to all these courses about real estate investing is that they were all just recorded by guys who held a seminar, recorded the seminar, put it all on CDs and DVDs, and started selling it so they could reach more people. I thought, I can do that. So I threw together a one-day workshop, about 6 hours, for real estate investors, where I was just going to give them a mind dump of all the direct marketing knowledge that I had learned, again, through marketing my band and studying people like Dan Kennedy and others like that. And I was able to sell. I had a list of 83 people from this meetup that I was a part of, and I did a mailing sequence out to them. So a very small list, and this isn't even email or anything yet, and got 25 people in the room, $200 a piece. So I made $5,000. And at that point, it was like, that's it. I am... this is for me. I love the teaching. I love making something like a workshop and packaging it up and selling it. And I was smart enough to record it at the time. And, I sold it locally a little bit. And then I figured I got to find other ways to sell this sucker. I've recorded this great, workshop. I was burning them literally on CDs off of my computer. And I took all my slides from my workshop that day and put it into a 3-ring binder. And I was just posting on forums and things at the time. There's no social media,
Right?
None of that kind of stuff. And that's where I started dabbling in online marketing. And bit by bit, 2005, I stumbled across this word podcasting in a email newsletter I was reading. Googled it. Google didn't know what I was talking about. Tried to correct me. It was like, did you mean? And I can't remember what it corrected to, but it thought I was trying to find something else. But I did find a few blog posts, and it was brand new. Podcasting was brand new at the time. And it just kind of this lightning bulb went off for me, and a light bulb went off for me in my head. That this was going to be significant for business, for education, for marketing. And so I threw myself into podcasting and was still selling my real estate course, but started a couple different podcasts that became pretty popular. One of which was the first podcast about internet marketing and internet business. And that was Internet Business Mastery, started in 2005. And for 13 years, it was quite a popular podcast and blossomed into an education business for beginning entrepreneurs, teaching them all the ins and outs of how to start their own business. And a few years ago, I needed a change up after 13 years of doing that. And I've been consulting with established thought leaders, speakers, consultants, coaches, authors, academics, and those types, because I love big ideas. I love important ideas. I think there's a lot of ideas out there that need to get out to the people and populations they can serve best. And so I love helping these people get a bigger platform and package up their ideas into new income streams like online courses and things like that. And that brings us to today.
Wow, that's amazing. So that first of all, I love that because I always like hearing the story of the entrepreneur behind, because it's kind of like you're figuring things out. Sometimes you're scratching your own itch, and then you find a niche within, which I like. So interestingly enough, I know you have a very clear message now. So if you and I meet in the airport and we're sitting next to each other, what do you tell me that you do in like one sentence?
Yeah, sure. I help speakers, consultants, and coaches to package up and communicate their knowledge on the internet through effective marketing and content, as well as creating stuff like online courses so that they can reach more people, impact more people, and have bigger opportunities and more freedom in their life.
That's amazing. So then if we were to carry on that conversation, which I want to carry on right now, is you said a key word when you were describing, and you mentioned thought leader. Mm-hmm. Obviously, I know that's a word now that's being more prevalent these days, or maybe it's just me who's more in this space working with thought leaders. We're more or less doing in that same space. Who is a thought leader and who is not?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. I mean, it's like thought leader is kind of one of those things you probably don't want to call yourself, but it's nice if other people call you that.
Yeah.
When I'm saying it here, and that's why, I started that whole phrase of what do I do, saying specifically coaches, consultants, speakers, authors, because it can be very nebulous what a thought leader means. But I do like telling people I want to elevate their thought leader brand and help them establish and grow a thought leader business. And that definitely speaks to them. So I think people who resonate with that are people who want to be known for for their ideas, for what they know, for their message. They feel driven. I mean, sure, they want to make more money. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, but I primarily love working with and attract a lot of people who just feel driven to share some part of their story or some expertise they've developed over years or decades. They're really good at what they do. They've had, some success. They've got a good network that recognizes them as an expert and a leader, but they're looking at the internet and going, I know I can amplify this further. I'm just not sure how to do it. And especially in a way that feels authentic to them, because there's a lot of digital marketing that can feel really yucky to the academic who's like, oh, how can I reach more people? Mm-hmm. Oh, but I don't want to be one of those guys, right? So that's where I come in and help them find, so that's how I kind of think of.
Yeah, no, and the reason why you're probably interested in where I'm going with this, and the reason why I asked this, Jason, is I'm wondering if the people that you work with, they want to put themselves out there, or you're more tapping into people like, hey, you have a genius that you're taking for granted. Which one is it? Is it one or the other?
Yeah, I really like this question. I would say that it's a Venn diagram of the two, really. I mean, in order to work with me, they already have some identity as an expert. It's probably just within a certain, I don't want to say narrow, but just a certain limited realm, right? It's like they're the academic, and people in academia, probably, at least in their field, know who they are, or maybe they've written a book. But, so at some level they've had to go like, oh, I've got something I want to share, and they're doing something there to get it out, but it's very dependent on their time, and they haven't really necessarily put a business model around it. That said, there's always, as we level up to the next level of anything that we're doing, our mindset likes to play tricks on us, right? So no matter what, who I'm working with, how far along they are, what their immediate goals are, I almost always end up doing some work around what I call unique genius. Nice. And what I mean by that is just like tapping into their message, owning their message even more, owning what are their strengths that they bring at a level that most people can't bring. So they feel, that much more confident about communicating it and selling it. Some of them are uncomfortable selling it. So there is a new level of owning that usually comes along with the work that I do.
I love that. No, and I think recently I've been reading. I think it's well, you probably know Expert Secrets by Russell Brunson.
Yeah.
And I think what's really important to hear in that is there's if sometimes we take our knowledge for granted, and being an expert, as you and I both know, we're in the space, we're learning every day, and I think it's an expert never stops learning, but it doesn't mean that you can't help someone that's maybe if you're 2 chapters ahead. So I think that's interesting. It'll be very interesting. So I guess let's segue right into this one, going digital segment. So how have you seen your clients adapt with the current times that we're in right now? If you're consuming this, it is currently May 26th. Obviously we're in the midst of a pandemic, hopefully at the climax, and I'm sure now online traffic or on basically being online is almost a requirement at this point. But
right.
How have you seen your clients or even yourself pivot with COVID? Is it just more of doing what you were already doing, or is there an area that you see that people are really doubling down on?
Yeah. So for myself, it's a lot of just what I was already doing. And fortunately, because I already work at home and I already have digital courses and workshops and programs, and I'm fortunate in that it's kind of, I don't want to say business as usual, but largely what I have been doing. Now, that said, there are a lot of what I have seen, and particularly with one client comes to mind recently, who over like a 48-hour period and about 3 or 4 phone calls lost 40% of her immediate income, because she did a lot of in-person teaching, and she's also an adjunct professor. So like that university went online. She had to scramble to figure out, how do I teach? She teaches dance and like movement and some very like physical type things. So she's used to being in the studio, and she had to figure out, how do I teach a Princeton dance course through Zoom? Now, at the same time, some of these other clients that just had to, they moved away from New York and weren't going to be working with her, or shows that she was choreographing for, they got shut down. She was thinking, well, what can I do here? And she actually had a couple of workshops coming up that she traditionally, again, taught in a studio, like, they're like a week-long pedagogy, which is, teaching how to teach. So she'd teach dance teachers how to teach for a week and make a good amount of money off of that. And bam, that was gone because she had to cancel any kind of in-person events. So pretty quickly we were looking at, okay, well, what can you do then to take these things online? And what I told her and a number of my clients and anybody who's asking this type of question is, when there's disruption, there's always opportunity. And when there's such a big disruption that affects so many people, like everybody's needs and priorities just shifted overnight. So the most important things were, number one, to recognize the situation that we're in, and in any kind of like communications and stuff, like just own that and go, yeah, wow, this is crazy. And things are, I want to see what I can help out, how I can help out. And then like really keep your ear to the ground and reach out to people and have conversations to figure out, okay, well, what is top of mind and most important to them right now? And how can I best offer value and serve in that way? And she came back with a lot of interesting things. And in her professional field, one area that she's involved in called Certified Movement Analysts, in a Facebook group, a bunch of people were saying, we'd like to use this time to brush up on some fundamentals so that when things get back to quote unquote normal, whatever that's going to be, we're that much more prepped with just our knowledge and staying on top of our game. So she saw an opportunity, and within 2 weeks she had launched a Zoom course, just piloted very quickly, like, okay, I'm doing 4 weekly calls over 4 weeks, and I'm going to be teaching, I'm mixing 2 different courses up. So one course she taught was these fundamentals, and she just threw that together, got a bunch, like 100 people on there to take the thing. Now it was a little bit lower price, so she was going for more volume, but then she maxed out her Zoom room, because that 100 people is what the meeting level is, right? And then she also, that pedagogy course, she took that online, and that was, I think, 4 weeks in a row, just weekly Zoom. So she just piloted something, and we just kept it very simple, but we knew exactly, we identified, okay, here's this target audience, here's the thing that's top of mind and the outcome that they're really looking for right now. And she was actually able to replace all of that income that she lost in a matter of 3 or 4 weeks by putting together very quickly a couple pilot online programs. So I think there's a lot of that going on, whether forced by your employer, or because you've lost income and you're pivoting and figuring it out. people trying to transition to render their services. And sometimes that's even new things that you haven't been doing before, but that are now needs or just ways that you can serve your target market. And that's what you got to do to stay on top of what's going on right now.
Yeah, definitely. And any gaps, if anything, that have been exposed now are coming to light. And I think those are opportunities even in our business to address, whether it's technologically or whatever the case might be. I want to make sure I anchor this point, though. You talked about having your ear to the ground. That might sound like very obvious, but for your current clients, what does that conversation sound like? Like if I'm your client right now, what is it? You know, in the lab, we like to get tactical, Jason. So what is it? What is the question that you may ask a current client of yours? Is it as simple as asking, hey, where can I be of help? Or what are you struggling with? Like, I'd like to hear.
Yeah, it definitely can be. And I think, you know, in her case, she happened to come across this conversation in Facebook groups, and you can certainly see where your market is aggregating. And if there is that kind of a place, definitely go and see what are the conversations, what are the questions that are coming up, what's going on. But it's also a great time to actually get on the phone or a Zoom call or whatever with people. And so that could be current clients, past clients, you know, people on your email list. If you put a call out and say, I'm looking to talk to a few people who fit this criteria, and just have those conversations and ask, like, I mean, yeah, it can't be as simple as like, so yeah, what are you struggling with right now? Or what are your biggest needs? Or what's, what's keeping you up at night, if you can go that direct. But you just want to ask them about their experience. I mean, what you want to avoid is going like, so I'm thinking about doing this course and it's going to be this, this, and this. What do you think? Because first of all, you're being too prescriptive. And second of all, they're probably going to tell you what they think you want to hear, which is like, oh yeah, that sounds good. But you know, when the rubber meets the road, are they going to actually buy? And so what's better is just really asking a lot of good questions with follow-up questions to understand their experience as it is right now. What are the outcomes they're looking for, the frustrations they're having, the questions that they're running into, especially if those have shifted in the market, or like they did with COVID, you know, shifted for everybody in major ways. And so through those questions, you kind of collect these clues. And then as the expert kind of read the tea leaves and go, okay, I'm seeing the through lines. I'm seeing, okay, there's a lot of people in my industry who are struggling with X right now. And for me, like, for instance, it's a lot of people who were teaching workshops live or teaching live before, and now they're going like, how do I replace this income or transition very quickly? So in my own messaging, right before our call, I mentioned I was just closing up enrollment on a workshop that I do regularly called Launch Your Course. Right. And usually my messaging is, you know, hey, you can make a digital course and have a means of income that's not dependent on your time or energy, right? And I really focus on that kind of messaging, or elevate your thought leadership brand, that kind of stuff. But this time around, I really, because I knew this is what I was hearing back from people. A lot of people were stressed about replacing income, new income streams. What are they going to do with these, you know, fulfilling these clients and workshop and things that they, and so that's what the message was that I really stuck with this time around, because that's what I knew people were. So I was still selling the same product, and that may be the case for you too, but you might have to shift the messaging to be relevant.
I love the fact that you said that.
Yeah, that's what those conversations should look like.
Yeah, and I really want to bring that home, because I think that's so important. I think shifting your messaging right now, if you're talking about, you know, are you looking to scale your brand? Maybe people are not looking to scale; they're trying to figure out how to, you know, preserve or survive, right? And so your messaging has to really, you don't want to be tone deaf to our current times and situation. Right. I think it's funny. You that was one of the questions I had for you in the marketing sections, which is fantastic. But right before we switch to that marketing section, let's talk about, for some, you talk about the importance of staying relevant and keep showing up, was the word you used, to your audience as a thought leader. You know, where do you feel right now that the people, and I don't know if this changes by niche, but do you feel that there's a platform out there where it's been really relevant, maybe in your world, to keep showing up? If there's a listener out there who's thinking, where should I maybe be doubling down? Like, not that necessarily that your answer might, you know, work for their business, but I'm just curious to hear, where are people doubling down in your space, and to a listener who might be listening for their business?
Yeah, it's definitely going to vary by industry, and in general, a lot more people online, a lot more attention online.
Absolutely.
I'm on LinkedIn quite a bit, and that's a great platform right now for anybody in a B2B market. And the numbers in terms of the amount of people using LinkedIn and how often and how much definitely jumped up when COVID hit. And I think part of that too is because some people were losing their jobs or afraid of losing their jobs, and like, I got to refresh my network, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, that's part of keeping your ear to the ground, is kind of knowing like where are people turning their attention. But you know, if you already have an email list, or you already have a social media presence on a particular platform that you've been using, you know, just keep showing up there. And the reason why it's important to realize that is I think it would be easy to kind of you know, become insular and maybe be afraid of promoting anything, or, you know, saying anything or showing, because it might seem like, okay, is that, again, nobody wants to be tone deaf. But if you think about, you know, when the first few weeks of COVID, you go to the grocery store and you're like, there's no toilet paper, there's no soap, there's these things I need are not there. I think it's very analogous to, there are a lot of people in your market that are looking for guidance and leadership and like, what's going to happen? Where do I go next? I have these new problems, things have shifted. And it's very frustrating for them if they go to the shelf and you're not there, right? So leadership, I mean, these times of crisis where people need like insight and hope, and I mean, that's a great time to be of service and to show up. And then that goodwill, first of all, you'll keep that relationship going so it doesn't break, you know, as time goes on, but also you'll gather more eyeballs and listeners in showing up more, because more people are going to be there looking for it in a time like this. And, you know, you're just building up a lot of goodwill at the same time. And I think you can both show up, be of service, and still, you know, promote your thing. Which that client I mentioned, you know, she very quickly pivoted and took 2 or 3 programs online, but she was also showing up with like, hey, here's this meditation thing that I do. I want to offer anybody for free who wants it, you know, and she was doing things like that too. Right. So, you can balance that out. I think there's a way to do both.
Yeah, no, and as you should for any time, I think that ratio of over delivering value, then offer,
Right.
I think it serves you well. But I really love how you said be of service and leadership. I think it's key, because people are looking around for leaders. Like, and I think you said that perfectly. Speaking of leadership, so there's tons of leaders out there. There's tons of thought leaders. But I want to touch on a point that you made about a key post that I had the pleasure of kind of reading, because I always do my homework when
Nice.
a practitioner comes into the lab. You
Yeah.
talk about when you were sitting in, I think it was like there was Britney Spears. I don't know if it was her, if it was like the manager or
Right.
the what was it exactly? Enlighten me. It was
So this is an article. It was first an email newsletter,
Yeah.
and then it was an article, and the subject line or the headline of it was what Britney Spears vocal coach taught me about.
Vocal coach. Thank you.
Talking
Thank you.
about marketing, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, so this was going back to that period of time where I was very serious about my band, early 2000s.
Yeah.
You know, kind of that Incubus sound, and we had like a female singer sounded like Gwen Stefani, and a bassist like, you know, Flea from Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Yeah,
So it was,
nice.
I don't know, I thought it was a cool sound. Anyway, we were at a conference in Los Angeles. I mean, much like we'd go to business or real estate conferences now, right? It's like you're going there to learn how to make it, how to, you know, learn from the professionals, learn from people in the industry. And Britney Spears' vocal coach was giving a speech or something. I can't remember exactly what the topic was, but one thing very much stuck out in my mind. And she said, you know, I've worked with a lot of people, Jack Black, Gwen Stefani, Britney Spears. She's just like naming, you know, she wasn't just name dropping. She was like making a point here. And she said, you know, and these are talented people, but, you know, they don't necessarily have like the most amazing voice. Like a lot of you in here have more musical talent than they do, and are perhaps better singers, perhaps even better songwriters. But the truth of the matter is, it's not just talent or expertise that gets you there. What all of my clients have in common that I noticed is they figured out how to really tap into what makes them unique and just turn that up to 11. And that's turn it up to 11 as a reference to what is that, Spinal Tap, which is like a mockumentary about a band, and the guy's got a guitar amp where it doesn't go to 10, he has it going all to 11. So it's like, you know, just turning up those things. And this kind of goes back to what you asked earlier about really owning, you know, at an even greater depth, what you bring to the world, and not discounting that, and realizing, you know, just because it comes easy to you doesn't mean it comes easy to other people, and doesn't mean it doesn't have value just because it's easy to you. Yeah. So
that's fantastic. Yeah.
Cranking it up, you know, and really.
Absolutely. And it ties in with your point, Jason, about the leadership. I think even during these times, as a leader, you can show some vulnerability as well that you're going through, and you're showing off the personality, the perspective, the strengths, right? Like, I think that ties into the brand. And I definitely wanted to echo that, because I thought you brought those points out really well. And as far as how to gain attention.
Right.
So tell me, we're in the experiment segment real quick right before we go into rapid fire questions, and I want to know, like, what are you playing around with as far as I would assume, are you just doubling down on what's already working, or are you constantly kind of testing, experimenting? Come on, I got to throw it
Yeah.
in there, man. I'm branding it in. Are
So
you
I love
experimenting
this.
things currently, or what's the deal?
Yeah, you ask great questions. You really do. Yeah, I love the idea of experiments because I think of business strategy as one experiment after another. You know, your best hypothesis, and I like to do quick experiments to try things out and see if they're going to work with the least cost and least risks possible, and then move forward and double down on what's working. So, to answer your question, right now, I'm actually going to be I've been getting ready to experiment with some Facebook ad campaigns, and I haven't done that for a number of years. For one, I was doing other things for list building and getting referrals and stuff like that. But the reason why I'm looking at that is because ad costs have actually gone down because not nearly as many people are running ads right now.
Absolutely.
And so I'm like, okay, great. I'm going to get in there, do some list building, spend some money while it's cheap, and build my list up. So I'm excited to experiment with that. And I, so when I'm going to go into something like I said, it's been a number of years since I've run Facebook ad campaigns. So I just kind of like get out there and see like what's being said, what's being recommended, and find a couple of approaches to mess around with. And in particular, I'm very interested in what I refer to as, a customer journey approach. And what that means is, so often with Facebook ads, we think of put the ad in front of them, it sends them to a landing page immediately, and you're trying to get them to sign up for a freebie to get their email list, and you're paying for those leads, right? But first of all, it costs more money to try to get people off of Facebook to a landing page. And second of all, it's a pretty abrupt customer journey to take them immediately to, hey, I want your email. And something I've been saying the last few years is it's not as clean as just get their email and then put them through an email sequence. Sometimes it works out that way, but people's attention it's all over the place. Right
Do you
now,
think
right?
that's changed as of recently, like very, very recently, Jason? Or because I know obviously that that's a proven concept, right? Like funnel, etc. But do you think that the way we go through or experience funnels as a consumer has changed drastically?
I think it's changed quite a bit in the last 4 or 5 years for a number of reasons. And part of that is because of the sophistication of what's called retargeting, meaning that somebody has seen, it just happened to me today. I was looking at couches 2 days ago on, I don't know, some other site. It's a little bit.
Don't say it. They're listening to us.
I know it's a little bit freaky sometimes, right?
Yeah, no, it is.
So, looking at couches on some site, and then another site's ad, pops up on my Instagram feed. And actually I clicked it and I'm like, wow, these guys got some great deals on some of the same stuff. Yeah. And so it was actually really well placed, but they were clearly like saying, we want to reach people who like this brand over here. Let's show our ads to them. It can also be like, hey, here's some people who are already on my email list or who have visited my site or visited this specific sales page, right? And so the point being is you can always serve up the exact next right message somebody needs. So, you can first warm them up on Facebook with just having them see some content there, not trying to even get them to take that action of going away from Facebook, but just like, oh, here's an interesting video about a question that's definitely, one I've been wondering about. I think I'll watch it. And then I can go like, okay, anybody watch that video? Let me see something else. Here's something else to think about. And after a couple of those, it might be like, okay, here's a freebie. Come give me your email address now that so the point being is like these things, the experience is a little more circuitous than it used to be. It's not as just like get them on the email list and put them through a sequence. It's like, you got to use some of this sophistication to not just scare them away because you're like hammering them with the wrong message too fast or in the wrong, right? It's like, okay, if they've already been so far in that customer journey, then you kind of know what's next. And so they just maybe I just need to serve up some testimonials now for them to see because they've clearly gotten the ways and they might be starting to consider my thing, or, do I need to earn their trust first some more? So hopefully that's not too like esoteric and out there, but that's the kind of thing that I'm excited to experiment with more because the price is right now.
Absolutely. We'll be right back. In the Keeping It Real segment, what do you think all thought leaders that you work with struggle with the most when they're transitioning from like, okay, cool, I'm good at what I do. Maybe it's on-site consulting. Maybe it's public speaking. Now I'm trying to go digital. I know, honestly, maybe this is a selfish question for me because we'll talk more offline as we're in the works as well, internally working here. But what is a common thing that you're seeing that there are people are struggling with? Is it how much they know? Is it the video maybe that they're afraid of being like? What are some common themes that keep popping up, you think?
Yeah, so I mean, here's the interesting thing is all of that tech stuff can work itself out. I mean, when I was first making online courses, back in 2004 and putting them online, we didn't have the stuff that we have today. Like we were kludging stuff together to like have people come through. It's like now you can even for free get something on pretty easily. So
Yeah.
what's most important that I see people struggle with is a couple different things I want to mention there. Number one is that they get too caught up in the technology and thinking they got to have, the nice platform and the nice videos and the nice audios and the da-da-da. Earlier, I mentioned about that client who needed, out of necessity, she needed to replace income very quickly. We kept it simple. We're just like Zoom. Just all you need to know is who's the ideal student, what's the ideal transformation or outcome that they want that you're going to give to them, sketch together enough information for them to look at it and go, yeah, that's relevant to me. Get it in front of, a handful of the right people and test it. Like, can you get some people to buy the thing? And then later, do a pilot quick. So I see too many people struggle because, and sometimes it's from perfectionism, but they spend weeks and weeks and sometimes months and still haven't gotten the course out there because they're getting hung up on all this stuff.
Analysis paralysis.
It's just like, yeah,
perfection.
Keep it simple. Keep it simple the first time out there. The second thing I see people struggle with is that, it's just the wrong offer. They haven't done that customer discovery, that those conversations that we talked about, the keeping your ear to the ground. Like before I launch anything new, I try to have had several conversations with people that are in that segment of the market that I want to create something for. And I'm just double checking my hypotheses before I do my first experiment of a pilot course to see if it'll work. And, I've gotten to where I can get something up and sold in a matter of 3-4 weeks from idea to testing in the market. And that's incredibly important. Speed is really important.
Absolutely. Wow. Speaking of speed, great segue. The core rapid fire questions, my friend.
Nice.
What's your favorite marketer of all time?
My favorite marketer?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Ooh, come on, give me the juice.
I'm
sure you've consumed so much. Or top 3 that comes to mind, maybe like is it a Ryan Dice or is it past that? Is it Ogilvy or like?
Okay, so who is it that said, always enter the conversation already going on in the mind of your customer. I believe it's Claude Hopkins, who's just, classic ad man, direct marketer, from decades ago.
Yeah.
Find his books online. And that's a phrase that I use all the time. And essentially those conversations are me trying to get into their mind so I can meet them where they're at and then bring them down this garden path to like, this is the solution you want. And you should probably consider it now because it's costing you not to, fix the thing that you're struggling with, kind of thing. So the better you can get into that mind and essentially have empathy for the people that you want to serve, the better the marketer you are. So he's one that comes to mind because just that phrase is at such a foundation of my approach to marketing. And when you do that, you don't have to use as many of the tricks and gimmicks to try to get people to buy because it's the right message to the right people. Exactly, what they're thinking, what they need. And that kind of goes back to understanding that customer journey and guiding them.
Wow. Wonderful. Favorite book?
Man, you're just like nailing me down to,
or as of late, something that you're reading, as of late.
Yeah. Okay. So I was just talking to somebody recently about this and I actually use this with clients quite a bit. And this ties into the Unique Genius stuff that we talked about. So one of my favorites for Unique Genius is this book. Anybody on the video can see this. It's called Strengths-Based Leadership.
Ooh,
Strengths-Based Leadership. This is related to Strengths Finder 2.0, which I will grab. So this is a little red book right here. Again, if you're on the video, you can see it's too white.
And who's that by our listeners?
What's that?
Who's that by?
Okay, so for anyone listening, these are both by Tom Rath, and they're from Gallup Press, so like the Gallup organization, like Gallup polls and stuff. So there's a lot of research that went into these, and both of these essentially have assessments that come with them. So Strengths Finder, there's 30 different strengths. You read a little bit at the beginning, and you get a code with the book. You take a 20-minute assessment. They say out of these 30 strengths we've identified, here are your top 5. And based on those top 5, then they tell you here are the things you should be focusing on, and the things that you should probably outsource or avoid because you'll be miserable and just, and it's a very strengths focus instead of like, oh, improve your weaknesses. It's like, no, double down on your strengths and find ways around the rest. Strengths-based leadership is the exact same thing, but specifically for leaders. So the output is here are your top 5 strengths and how it relates to how you show up as a leader, which I like a lot for my clients because again, thought leadership, essentially they are trying to show up and lead with their ideas. So Big fan of those because it helps you really dial into, uncover, appreciate, and even have language about talking about your strengths, which are parts of your unique genius.
Wow. And if you guys are listening to this, Jason had that at arm's length, so you know it's important if he's got it there as a that's amazing. Good for you for sharing that. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Real quick here, whose content do you closely follow, if anyone, or that's kind of sticks out at you that is somewhat noteworthy?
Yeah, so one that immediately pops to mind, whose content I follow quite a bit, is Gan Sullivan, who founded Strategic Coach. And I took some of his program many, many years ago, and a lot of the stuff I learned in that program continues to be valuable and influential today. So he's an entrepreneurial strategic coach for decades and decades and decades now. His stuff's excellent. He has a lot of different books, great content on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
When it comes to unique genius, he's got a book called Unique Ability, which is also what I see as one piece of unique genius. So yeah, that's somebody who pops to mind, at least I could come up with others, but that's definitely one.
No sweat here. Best habit that serves you every day, Jason.
Well, the one that always comes to me is just sleep, because, it's such it should probably be an obvious answer, but finally I've gotten to the point where I've learned that I get less than the 7-8 hours that I need, and everything else is harder. So it's just
you're paying your taxes. I always say you got to pay your taxes at some point. Right. Either you're going to pay them later or you pay them now.
So yeah, that's the biggest one, because I have so much less anxiety when I sleep well. I have so much less tiredness. I can think clearer. I'm more creative. Sleep.
Good for you. What's the best tool that helps you excel throughout your day? You say it could be an application, could be Notepad, it could be anything.
Mm-hmm. A tool that helps me excel throughout my day. I'm trying to think of maybe a non-obvious one that other ones have. I mean, one that I use a lot is Asana, which is my task manager and productivity manager. I communicate with my team through that. I keep at the beginning of the day, I'm always going in there and going, okay, here are the things I got to get done today. So I just kind of know what to block in. Yeah. I can plan ahead. So, that works well for me when it comes to my time management.
Last but not least, my friend, if you could describe a successful thought leader in one word, what word would you pick?
Successful thought leader in one word. Well, I'll just say impact. And, that's kind of a generic word that gets used in a lot of different ways and perhaps overused sometimes. But, the people I work with and that I really think of as true thought leaders are ones who, at the core, they're just driven by wanting to help as many people as they can with this expertise, their idea, their story, their message, their thing. Something they've been through that they want to now educate others on. And, that's what, yes, they want more freedom and more opportunities and more money, but really at the core, it's about helping more people.
And just like that, I mean, I think, first of all, I want to thank you, because obviously you're at the head there helping all these wonderful people, having an impact. And I think that always says a lot when you're the one helping others have an impact. It's kind of that domino effect. So I definitely want to salute to you and all that you've done. And maybe I even I sold you short, but you've had a tremendous impact with a lot of huge thought leaders in the space. And so I definitely want, everyone to have a look at the stuff that you're doing and the impact that you're having on those impacting others. With that said, so again, you've come a long way, Jason. How can the people stay plugged in with what you're currently doing? What is the best way they can get in touch with you or find out more about what you do?
Yeah, so the first way is I actually have a podcast of my own, so people listening to this might be interested in, and if they like the kinds of things I've talked about today. The name of my podcast is Impact. Easiest way to find it is just go to jasonvanorden.com and click on the podcast thing in the navigation, and that'll get you there just fine. And then I was going to also share, it's we touched on online courses, but if you want to get more information about, I have case study and stuff that you can check out. If you go to onlinecourse.download, then you'll be able to grab basically an ebook that walks through my 4-step way of how to design a good offer. Like I said, one of the things people struggle with is having a good offer. And so certainly that will help you dial into the right offer. If you want to check that out, that's the actual URL, onlinecourse.download. And that's where they can find that.
Absolutely. We'll make sure that we definitely include that in the show notes. And again, I can't thank you enough for stepping into the lab with you, Jason, and having you drop a lot of good gems, valuable gems. So just like that, guys, we are out.